the state of California undertook proceedings to execute me. I was arrested and accused of planning a home invasion robbery in which someone was killed. Despite the fact that I was never accused of trying to kill anybody, planning to kill anybody, or actually being there when someone was killed, I was still charged with the death penalty. I was working as a private investigator at the time, and I was going to law school. And I knew exactly what to do. I had the best possible attorney. I threw every dime I had into it. And after 4.5 months, the case against me was dismissed because there was no evidence against me. However, I come from a county, Sacramento, in which people just really like to try harder. So, some of the perpetrators of the crime had been arrested at that time. In fact, one of them was actually present with me during my motions in limine. We had the same pretrial hearing. He went on to trial. He was convicted and sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. The day that he was sentenced, he went back to the jail, picked up the telephone, called the district attorney, and said, "I can help you." They took him back to court, and they recalled his sentence, which can be legally done in California within the first 120 days. And he remained unsentenced for 3.5 years while he testified against his cousin. He put him on death row. He admitted in a statement that he actually had been involved in the crime, which was the first time he had ever said that. And he and the district attorney sat down and they concocted up a little story. As far as keeping him in the fold, they had basically led him to believe that he would be resentenced to 25 years to life. And they gave him the impression that he would be out in 12.5 years. They also put him in special housing. They let him see his wife. They let him have sex with her. They let him visit his children. They got him a special job. And when he took them up into the hills, along with the DA and the DA's investigator, they let him bring his son along. And the district attorney actually gave his son some of the coins from the robbery. The last time I checked the evidence code, that's considered evidence, and I think proceeds from a violent crime is a particularly horrendous thing to give a child to play with, but that's what my district attorney did. The victim in this case was a heavy investor in coins and bullion, things like that. And so the police had very quickly focused on coins and coin shop dealers. One of the people that I worked for, because I did freelance work, was the owner of Allied Coins. His name was Virgil Fletcher, and he and his partner were actually splitting up their business. It was very acrimonious. And so I did a lot of skip tracing, accounts receivable, things like that. But I never went in the shop. I didn't work in the shop. I didn't know anything about the customers in the shop. The victim was, as I said, he was a heavy investor in coins and that type of thing, and he was a very good friend of Virgil Fletcher's partner. But he hated Virgil Fletcher. In fact, during the robbery itself, Mr. Davies, the victim, said, "Virgil Fletcher set me up." But that evidence was suppressed. It never came out of my trial. So anyhow, this is all going on. I don't know anything about it. I'm trying to get my head and my life back together. And they came and they re-arrested me again. Despite the fact that the district attorney knew how contrived and how fake the testimony against me was, he still filed for the death penalty against me. I was charged with the death penalty, so of course I could not bail out. The other problem that I had is I had spent every dime that I had on my first go-around on this case. If you were ever arrested and charged with a serious crime, you need to have a whole lot of money. It isn't just that you need to hire a good lawyer. You have to pay for discovery. Back then, it was 25 cents a page. It's probably $5 a page by now. There are so many attendant costs to this that most people can't make it. I know people that have lost their houses, they lost everything, just trying to defend themselves, whether they actually committed the crime or not. So this time, I had to ask the court to appoint an attorney for me. There was a conflict, as Joe mentioned earlier. Some of the people involved were being represented by public defender. And so they had to appoint somebody from the panel for me. I thought, well, they appointed Rayfield, and I thought, well, this isn't too bad. And his dad was a very well-known and an excellent criminal defense lawyer. But one thing I can tell you for sure is it's not hereditary. This guy was just good enough to get me convicted. In his defense, I do have to say, however, that so much went on behind the scenes. There were so many strange, unethical, and unbelievable things going on. A lot of the stuff, just simply wasn't available to us. So we went to trial. But in the meantime, after about 8.5 months, The California Supreme Court issued a decision in People v. Carlos. People v. Carlos held, if you do not kill somebody, try to kill somebody, be involved physically or actually involved in the killing of somebody, then you cannot be charged with the death penalty. That took my case out from under the death penalty, and the judge set a bail of $25,000. In 24 hours, I was out on the street. 24 hours after that, the district attorney had me back in court, yelling and screaming, and trying to get the judge to raise my bail to $1 million. Fortunately, I had a good judge at that particular point, and he said, there's no way. And you know what, the lies. If she hasn't done anything, you don't have any grounds. And so she's going to stay out. And I stayed out for 3.5 years, because at times, nobody really seemed to be all that interested in taking me to trial. They tried my co-defendant, Gary Massey's cousin, and he said that, oh, it was his cousin that had done the shooting. I doubt that, but I don't know for sure. And so Stephen DeSantis was convicted, and he was sentenced to death. They finally got through with everybody else, and then they came for me. Gary Massey took the stand and told all about how I had this big plan. Now, why a bunch of guys that had been running around committing crimes for years would be getting advice from me about anything is beyond me. That isn't how it really works in the world of criminality. Secondly, to be perfectly honest, if I had planned it, it would have gone better. The thing was a disaster from start to finish. I mean, they actually went and broke back in 6 hours after the crime. It was nuts. It was nonsense. But I couldn't seem to get a handle on this one way or the other. The thing, I think, there are two things that really caused me to be convicted. The first is that in 1986, when I went to trial, we had really still believed that the police and the district attorneys and everybody else really did the best they could. Sure, sometimes they made mistakes, but you know, everybody was out there trying, everybody was ethical, there was no such thing as corruption, and they were all just doing their jobs. Today we know a lot better. You have the Rampart scandals, you have the court scandals, you have the judges back east who are actually selling children and sending them to prison. Well, they made over $2 million profit. They were paid by the people that directed private prisons. You have a lot of corruption, you have a lot of problems and a lot of issues. But back then we didn't believe it. And the second thing is the district attorney stood up and said, this man, Gary Massey, has no reason to lie. Why would he lie? He's not getting anything from this. We haven't made any promises to him. He's got nothing coming. He just wants to clear his conscience. Apparently the theory was that he just grown a conscience. I'm not sure, but anyhow. What the district attorney was lying about, and it's not perjury because the district attorney is not under oath. The district attorney had already written a deal. It was on district attorney's letterhead. It was an official promise that Gary Massey would be resentenced to 25 years to life. Plus, he also said he got no special treatment or anything else. The other thing they suppressed was a lot of exculpatory evidence, such as the victim stating Virgil Fletcher set me up. At one point during my trial, my district attorney actually referred to Virgil Fletcher as an unindicted co-conspirator, because it was in recognition of the fact that I couldn't have committed the crime without his help, because I didn't have any way of getting the information. I didn't know those people. My question was, well, why aren't you indicting him?